Okay. So bad lighting at all. I just have some hot spots, but
Here we are.
okay, here we are. So we're going to look at Belle today, and I have the video pulled up. So let me share the screen and then let me make it big. And I even fast forwarded a little bit because do you just set your camera on a post or do
It's on
you?
a jump standard, and the mounting block is like right behind that jump. And so then I have to, get situated and get on and then get her into
Okay.
the frame because this is about 2/3 of the arena. So there's still about 1/3 that you can't see behind the camera, which is why they keep wandering off camera.
Okay. So let me just hit play. So any questions you have while I'm just kind of watching the first few minutes of the video?
I don't think so. I think she did very well. And I'm loving the fact that, like the other two, she's spending most of her time, barely above horizontal if she comes up at all. We get lots and lots of steps where her head is level or lower. Um, and you may have to like keep dragging forward because I
Okay.
feel like she ended up out of camera a little more than Tally, and we had to cut it
Okay.
short because somebody came in the arena. Um, so yeah, I just want to make sure if I need to adjust what I'm doing. I kind of feel like she's a little more like Storm and that the wandering is okay. Whereas with Tally, we talked about putting her more on a circle.
Yeah, with Tally, the steering will help. With Belle and a little bit with Storm, but definitely more with Belle. The longer she makes her neck, the more she is feeling stable with her hindquarters.
Mm-hmm.
She's definitely, you're getting some really nice lengthening through the neck. Her and Storm kind of hanging out at that long and level posture, like just there, she put her head below her withers. If you look at the hindquarters, she's more engaged than I've ever seen her, but there's a bit of stiffness and a little bit of instability in the hindquarters. And so, what I would say is that when she looks long and level, it's a good start. Same with Storm, but they would are probably in the last few degrees of what we could call isometric holding or the last few degrees of extension.
Mm-hmm.
So they're still holding a tiny bit through the shortening of the neck and the back muscles and not really feeling 100% stable or not quite engaged enough with the hind legs that they can really lengthen through the neck and the top line. Both her and Storm would most likely really fall into an obvious long and low because they don't have the hindquarter or back muscle to immediately come into more flexion as they lengthen the neck.
Mm-hmm.
So I like what you're doing. It's working. You're stabilizing your seat really well, letting her wander. And right off the bat, she's exploring more length through her neck than I've ever seen her be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fantastic. I wouldn't change anything, but I would look for, you could play with, I don't know, I would think with her rather than trying to play with steering, you might play with giving a little bit more leg
Okay.
just to see if she could push a tiny bit more and if that didn't help her stay in the lengthened neck longer. And I'm
Okay.
kind of guessing, like, I'm not 100% sure that would work, but that would be something I would try. So, because didn't she used to stop a lot when she would first lengthen her neck?
Yeah, I mean, she and Tally both were in that pattern right about the time we had the last lesson in November, and they have mostly stopping, um, and are able to maintain some speed, like a consistent rhythm now.
Yeah.
I feel like it just sort of knowing her, and when you say that, that feels sort of intuitively like probably a better answer for her than attempting to steer right now. I feel like steering will throw her back into her old head up pattern, the bracing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because she's using her hindquarters better than I've seen. She's slow, but she's forward, so she's being careful. But when she slows down more, like just there, she tends to, let me bump it forward a little. It looks like, and you can kind of pay attention to this and see if it's true when you're riding, but it looks like when she slows down, she has a harder time letting go of her neck. That's not true for every horse, but like her hind legs still wobble a bit through the hocks. They're a little bit narrow back there. So that speaks to the instability of the hindquarter. Um, she's getting her hind legs more underneath her than I've seen before, but that's still a work in progress. So you have two options. She is exploring she's getting stable enough through her midline and hindquarters that she constantly is attempting to lengthen her neck,
yeah.
but she almost immediately shortens it up again. So you have three things you can try with her, and it may change ride to ride to ride. But the first thing is just do what you're doing. And if you feel it's getting easier for you to keep your seat stable, then keep playing with this. It might just be a matter of time for her. Um, the second option is if she's still kind of like trying to lengthen as often as she is, but she's really not holding it for more than a stride or two. You could play with gentle inside rein, gentle bend, gentle turn to see if a little bit more adduction of the inside hind doesn't help her engage more.
Okay.
And in that case, I wouldn't play with the speed. If she doesn't stop, you're fine. So it's not really steering like we talked about for Tally, where the path of travel might help you gain more stability. I would look at light bends and turns when her neck is even sort of level,
Okay.
right? Especially if the neck is heading up, then the
Start a
bend and the
turn.
turn will
Yeah.
change that. But do you see how when the neck is heading down, it just doesn't head that direction for very long?
Yeah.
So what you can do with Belle is kind of watch the upward and downward direction of the neck in real time. So there it's going up, up, up. What you're doing is working, but I think a bend with a little bit of adduction of the inside hind might be what she needs to let go of her neck for more strides.
Yeah.
So that's option number two. You can play with it. If she loses forward or it makes her shorten her neck, then okay, leave it alone. The third option would be as soon as she's sort of wanting to lengthen the neck and you feel a gentle tug on the reins, match that feel in the reins to your calf pressure. So as she's taking the reins away, you're gently increasing the calf pressure at the same rate. So if she takes the reins away slowly, just sort of venturing out with the length of her neck, then you don't want to come off on with your legs too hard, too fast, because then she'll just tighten up against that.
Yeah.
But as she's lengthening her neck, if you're coming on with your leg support kind of at the same rate and the same flow or timing, that could help her just find a tiny bit more stability within the forwardness of the movement, which can also help her not have to go back and shorten her neck in order to find stability. That little
Yeah.
bit of extra push can sometimes be what helps them find more strides with the neck long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you kind of watch her, it's like, it's kind of level when she lengthens it, and it's quick to sort of head back up towards you. So that's what you're watching for is with Belle, you have to kind of like Tally's a little more obvious. It's really the same with all horses, but with Belle, it's very obvious. Like there, the neck is lengthening, going away. There, it's heading towards you, right? So while it's up, we're sort of looking at how many strides, or she stopped or you did. So that was actually, I wanted to show that in motion. Let's go a little bit more forward. So there it's lengthening, taking the head away. There it's coming up towards you,
Mm-hmm.
right? There it's lengthening away again. And then she gives you a deeper long and low. So what that means is your strategy is working, but what I would look for is what would help her be able to keep her neck longer for more strides,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
right? And it could be that this is the best she can do. This is the optimal support you can give her, and it's just going to be a matter of time. But I would experiment with as soon as the neck is shortening back towards you, maybe take a very light bend, put her on a turn, wait for her to take a little bit more of an obvious lengthening of the neck
Yeah.
before you come off the turn. So when you take the inside rein and if you take a light bend on a turn, there's a long delay in there between the adduction of the inside hind and when the horse feels stable with that change in the leg placement.
Okay.
So you want to stay on your turn. The purpose of it with Belle would be to really get either a more obvious lengthening of the neck, which she'd probably be long and low with the head below the withers because she won't
Mm-hmm.
control her body weight. Or even if it's kind of long and level, that there's no sort of up and back direction for the neck for more strides.
Yeah.
So with her, I'd probably mix it up a lot using the bend and the turn, um, or giving more leg while she's lengthening her neck. I
Yeah.
sort of suspect, even though she's improved the engagement a lot, she's kind of stiff in the hind legs. Like she doesn't really articulate the hock or the hip joint a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think a light bend on a turn just to help her again with a light adduction of the hind leg, that may help her just get a hair more engagement where she could let go of her neck for longer. And she's kind of wobbly back there and she's not very square. She's kind of narrow in her hind legs.
Yeah.
So that would be the reason it might not work to use
Okay.
a bend and a turn.
Okay.
Because when you bend and you turn, you get more adduction, but the stride of adduction is the leg is landing at an oblique angle.
Yeah.
And
So it
she's
would narrow
already
the base. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's already a little oblique she's not really straight and square behind.
Yeah.
So it might work. I wouldn't do it for long. I would do it to see if she could just find more stability on each hind leg one at a time,
Yeah.
gently. Then she gives you a deep long and low like that, that's where the leg might work much better.
Yeah.
So if she's kind of teetering on the neck coming up towards you or the neck lengthening away from you, the leg aid can be tricky. It might work. You could try it straight off the bat and see. It might work. But if she responds by shortening her neck, then you could play with a light bend and a turn. And once you get a deeper long and low, then the leg aid will typically work better.
Okay.
So, but she's giving you some moments. Like all you're doing
Yeah.
is really just trying to keep the neck in line with the back and keep your seat stable. And it's working for her. So I don't want to take you too far away from what you're doing.
Yeah.
But where Tally spent more time with the neck lengthening, she just lacked the stability. I think Belle isn't trusting her hindquarters yet enough to really decide that she doesn't need to hold in the neck.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Oops. She goes, yeah. Yeah. And even though the pushing phase of the stride is behind the torso and we're looking for more engagement,
Hmm.
sometimes when they lengthen the neck, the reason the leg aid works is because that little bit more speed can kind of act as a stabilizer.
That makes sense.
Hmm. And ultimately, she's going to need more engagement of the hindquarter. Like this is a good beginning, but she's still not really rotating the pelvis forward. She's not really braking with the hind legs. She just sort of takes her foot off the gas pedal.
Yeah.
So she slows down, but it's not a slowness from a resistance to her own body weight, which is what braking is. She
Yeah.
just sort of slows down in order to not have to engage as much or push as much.
Yeah.
So that's why I think the leg aid might be helpful. Yeah, and you see now that we're like 20 minutes in, you're getting what I would call kind of a deeper lengthening of the neck.
Yeah.
It's more obvious than when she sort of gently tries to stretch like there, she just sort of gently tries to stretch the neck out there. But the fact that she doesn't really go at it whole hog tells you she's either not engaged enough to really find stability on her hindquarters, or her back is so tight still and unstable that she's having a hard time making that transition of
Okay.
stabilizing her body from the front end to the hind end.
Yeah. Yeah. That all makes sense.
But she's very quiet. She's very concentrated.
Yeah. She really is. Like her ears are
Excuse
constantly
me.
on me the whole ride.
Hmm. And there's a tiny bit like we looked at with Tally. Let me go back a bit. Oops. There's a teeny tiny bit of her kind of lifting your right side. So you might again just play with putting a more weight than you think you need on your right
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. It is harder
Because
to check my thighs in the skirt. I will say that.
yes,
I don't
yeah,
have quite as clear a reference at that point, but
yeah,
yeah.
you can't really look down
Yeah.
and check. Yeah. So, questions?
I don't think so. I feel like the encouraging her to move forward, with a little bit of a leg aid is going to be really helpful. Um, I think that that's feels like from riding her and thinking about using that I think that will probably be a good option for her right now. Um, I'll play with both, and really
Yeah.
see which one works. And some of it may depend on how long we've ridden and, is she fatiguing or how she's starting out. But
The
yeah, it almost,
deeper they fall into long and low, the more ambitious you can be with your leg aids. When she's just starting to kind of lengthen through her neck, you really want to watch the timing of kind of how quickly or how firmly you're putting your leg aid on.
mhm,
In the past, Belle had a negative reaction to the leg aid. She would
yeah,
actually get more upside down
yeah,
and kind of push back against it. But I think if you play with that, like even if you play with the bending and turning, or you just keep doing what you're doing, you could add in the legs at any moment to just experiment.
yeah,
And like I said, even though what she really needs is more forward rotation of the pelvis, the pushing from the leg aid can really help to just stabilize the body while they're learning to more fully release the holding through the neck.
yeah,
And how's she
yeah.
doing for the farrier?
We haven't had an appointment in a while. I think it was probably a week or two before you were here. And then we're switching her to a different farrier now because her old farrier was moving. Um, And I think we have another appointment in like a week or so. So
Okay.
I'll get to find out what he thinks at that point. Um, she's pretty much asking to ride though. Like that's what sort
Mhm.
of blows my mind about her, is just with her history. When I have pictures of her, like she'll come out of the round bale. The round bale's in the back of their pasture, and she will come out of it. She won't come all the way to me, but she comes
Mhm.
out of it
Oh,
when she
good.
sees me. And then I generally ride Tally first, because she's more challenging physically. So, um, and about the time we're hitting, 45 minutes or so, Belle is generally down at the end of the arena where all the tack sits. And then the other day, I turned Tally loose and went to go clean up the poop piles before I grabbed Belle, and she was standing right in front of the saddle. Like
Oh,
she was just right
yeah.
there. So, like that to me is the biggest sign that like it is working. We're on the right track and she's getting it. It's just time.
Yeah, and both of them are doing well enough. I think the rider, just the weight of the rider is helping both of them feel more stable as they explore kind of changing the muscle use of the top line and the neck.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't bother with groundwork at this point at all.
Okay.
I would just ride. I would kind of play with what Belle's, play with what we talked about and see if you can't get, because when she fully straightens out the neck and really lengthens the muscles, her head is below her withers.
Yeah.
She doesn't have enough back muscle strength to not fall forward. And that's where when they look long and level, but the saddle isn't super stable, or the neck's just sort of going up and back a little, forward and away a little. It's kind of transitioning back and forth. That's it's the end of the posture of extension. And it can be called isometric holding because they'll start to just hold a little bit through the neck and back muscles rather than fully restoring the suppleness. And
Yeah.
by holding, it's a concentric contraction where when they lift the back, when they're actually flexing the spine, it's an eccentric contraction. So it's a lot of work to get from a concentric contraction directly
Yeah.
to an eccentric contraction. So letting her fall into long and low, or even using the turns to play with the adduction of the hind legs to get a more fuller lengthening of the neck. Then, as soon as she's in long and low, if your leg is coming on, she'll start to float back up with her neck, but you almost don't want her too level. I would err on the side of the pole being a little on the low side or long
Hmm.
and low rather than level. Like just there, what she's doing is that's the last version of extension. She's just
Yeah.
shortening a little, and it's only a couple of degrees of extension, but it's still the wrong direction of the spine
Yeah.
and the wrong muscle use. And that's really what you want to change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if she falls into long and low and stops, I wouldn't get too quick with my legs. I would put my legs on, but give her time to go forward, see if she can figure it out in long and low.
Yeah.
And I don't think she's one that's going to rush. When she gets in long and low, she's more likely to stop than to go too fast.
Yeah.
And that's again why the leg aid might be helpful
Yeah.
because it's the opposite of her kind of natural response
Yeah.
to falling forward.
Yeah.
So it could
And
act as a balancer or a stabilizer.
she is pretty much at the point where when we do stop, which is not nearly as much as it was like a month ago, when we do stop, she is staying low. So she's not having the pop-up reaction, when I
Oh,
ask her
good.
to move off. And neither is Tally, which again is like, like I don't know that we ever thought that we could get these horses here because they've both been so stuck for so long. Um,
No,
so
they're
it's
doing good.
yeah,
They're doing very good. And I think, like, you can see in your body how much she's still sort of shaking the saddle side to side.
Yeah.
There's still a bit of a rock in your body. And even though she looks long and level, that rocking side to side is the hyper rotation, which is the side effect of pushing the back down in extension. So
Yeah.
the fact that she looks long and level, but the saddle is sort of rocking side to side tells you you're in the last little bit of extension. And that's what
Yeah.
I would, with her, if you want to err on the side of completely out of extension, then it would be her pole below her withers posture.
Okay.
She would have to have that much length through her neck to fully release that last little bit of extension.
Yeah.
And she'll be a little more unstable when she first puts her head down. That's the problem. So as soon as she's long and low, if you're stabilizing your seat, keeping her neck straight, and maybe adding a little bit of leg, that might be enough for her to kind of pull together a new coordination.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I think I may end up needing the bending and then the leg aid, like almost
Hmm.
flowing together.
Yeah, because as soon as I don't think it's going to take much neck bending at all. I think as soon as you use the inside rein to turn, when the neck is floating up towards you, just think of turning on the inside rein and stay on the turn until you have a more obvious pulling down force on the rein. And the second she pulls down, I would come on with my legs and then just let her, if she stays on the turn, no big deal. You just need a straight neck in that moment, but you don't need a straight path of travel. So
Yeah.
if she kind of falls sideways and turns, just go where she wants to go with a straight neck.
Well, that
But
was going to be my next question is, does it matter which way we turn, or should I just kind of seek the path of least resistance?
no, I would just kind of feel where she's taking you with the saddle because when she really lengthens the neck and starts to change that muscle use, she's going to be pretty unstable at first. And so if you think of just keeping the neck in line with your seat bones, you'll feel that she shifts you a little bit left or a little bit right, or she steps sideways because she's not quite stable in that transition between holding muscularly and finding the skeletal coordination.
Hmm.
And so that's a really important window where if you try to steer, sometimes that puts them back in the overuse of the muscles.
Yeah.
So once the neck is more obviously lengthening and the pole is getting below the withers, that's when I wouldn't steer. If she's long and level and the neck is heading towards you, that's when I would steer with the rein.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And at that point, steering is just whichever way is easier. It's throwing in the turn to the direction
Hmm.
that's easier and not
Yeah.
resisting. Yeah.
And where you have room.
Yeah.
And I would alternate back and forth as much as possible. And then as you alternate back and forth on the turning, like right there, I would be using the rein to turn her. If that ended up bending the neck a little bit, so be it. If it doesn't, that's great too. But I wouldn't bend the neck first to turn. I would just take enough rein to put her on a turn. And if the inside rein bends the neck a little, don't worry about it. You're going to stay
Okay.
on that turn. Like, say you take a turn to the left. You want to stay on that turn until she obviously lengthens and has a downward pull. That's her telling you, okay, I feel stable on my inside hind. Then she won't hold it for very long. You're not steering as soon as she's long and low. You're just trying to stabilize the neck and the back. As soon as her head starts floating back up and shortening, take a turn the other direction. And then as you turn back and forth, maybe one side will show that you need more repetition than the other side. Like there
Yeah.
might be a harder side and an easy side as you play with that. But I'm not quite sure, like with Tally and with um, Storm, it was sort of obvious that just stabilizing your seat and lining up the neck was really working for them.
Yeah.
Both of them were still in what I would call the last bit of extension. their long and level wasn't a true basic balance long and level. It was a little bit more isometric holding.
Mhm.
But they were gradually, without changing your strategy, giving you more and more release through the top line, lengthening the neck.
Yeah.
Where Belle, I go, I look at her and I go, I think she might need a little more help yet.
Yeah.
So the turning and adding leg, you can play with both of those. You might even add leg on the turn and see, or you might
Yeah.
have to wait to give leg until she's lengthening the neck.
Yeah.
But just kind of ask her those questions and see if you don't get more length out of her neck, like there where she kind of pulled down in an obvious way. That's when you can come off of your turn. You want to wait for, because when we put them on the turn, they're going to adduct the inside hind leg for sure more, whether or not we have a neck bend, right?
Hmm.
If we bend the neck, we force the hind leg into deeper adduction. So you don't necessarily have to do that because she's already not straight and square behind. But the turn will just help her get the inside hind leg under her, and you stay on the turn because she won't pull down, even if you're getting the leg to work as soon as you turn, the horse won't release and lengthen the neck until they feel stable.
Okay.
And that's what you're waiting for. That's
Waiting.
why you're staying on the turn. The
Okay.
turn is setting it up so she's using it, but that doesn't mean she's using it to the point that she feels stable there and can let go of the neck. So that's the part you have to wait for. That just
Okay.
takes X number of steps for every horse. You never know how many.
Okay.
But the way the horse is telling you, I feel stable on that inside hind is, and sometimes they do it rudely. Sometimes we call it, snatching the bit
Hmm.
or snatching the reins. And I go, it's just when it's new to them, they do it violently.
Yeah.
So it can seem a bit rude, but it's like just let her keep doing that. Even
Yeah.
if it comes suddenly and quick and sort of violently, just let her keep doing that. And every time she does it, she'll be able to make that transition from stabilizing through the neck to stabilizing on the hindquarters, a few strides at a time. But I think you need more strides. Like with Tally and with Storm, they spent more time in the ride with their neck longer versus shorter.
Yeah.
And when I look at her ride, she's spending more time in the ride with her neck shortening up and back than it is lengthening forward and away.
Yeah.
So that's where I would say maybe give her a little more support.
Yeah. Yeah. This definitely wasn't our like best ride since it got cut short because the girl had come out right after. Actually, that's why there's such a long lag time. Is like I had literally just mounted and she came out and was like, "How long are you gonna be?"
Mm.
I was
Well,
like,
you're here, the
but
video's at the 20-minute mark.
yeah,
So I would expect to see what I'm seeing at the 20-minute mark. I might expect to see that. And let me go back quite a bit to the first couple of minutes. Get you in
I
the
think with Tally and Storm, we were starting to hit that at about 15 minutes, and then at about 30 minutes, they were getting pretty fatigued.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes. And so that's where I'm thinking with her, like at the beginning of the ride, I'm at the first like 3-minute mark.
yeah,
She has a lot more energy. So that's where you can use the bending and the turning, or just use the turning to help her to use that fresh energy, but not the wrong way.
yeah,
Right. And she's already attempting at 3 minutes to lengthen the neck. But
yeah,
if you kind of watch, it's like there it lengthens, and instantly in one stride, it's sort of coming back up. 2 strides later, it's going back down. Then there it's kind of coming up. Then it's kind of going down. But it's not
it's
as
not all the
dramatic. Like
way. Yeah,
that lengthening of the neck
yeah,
is what I would be looking for.
okay,
Yeah. And because she's a draft, because her neck looked too short for her body, that is a boatload of tightness in the neck.
yes,
And so it could be she needs a hair more engagement than Tally or Storm needed in order to let go of all that sort of years of tightness through the
Yeah.
neck, or it could be that it's not super comfortable for her,
It's probably a little bit of all of the above. And
right?
out of the three of them, she is the most tense.
Yeah. And so the turns, I said turn with tally, but that was more because a more circular path of travel keeps the hind legs underneath. And for Tally, it was really to help her stabilize the back and hind quarter.
Yeah.
For Belle, it still is helping place the hind leg deeper underneath, but it's more to help her get stable enough that she can let go of the muscle holding more consistently.
Yeah.
And if she loses forward from turning, but you gain a longer neck, then be patient with the stopping and going.
Yeah.
If she shortens her neck and stops, then stop the turning and just try the leg aid or go back to this
Yeah.
because that will work too.
Yeah.
Good. And
Yeah.
hopefully she's better for the next farrier.
I hope
But
so.
you can see, like, do you see how just there, as she came around the turn, this is why I want you to be careful without, not overbending her neck, is because just as she comes through this turn, you can really see it with her left hind leg. But if you watch the hind legs as she comes towards the camera, you see how the left one is always a little bit oblique.
Yeah.
You see how it's angled?
Yeah. It's
So
like,
she
yeah.
lands on the outside of both of her hind feet.
Yeah.
And so that's where you want to be careful not to force the hind leg under too deep, because when you're increasing adduction using a bend of the neck, the leg is going to land more oblique like that, more at an
Yeah.
angle. And what she really needs is a widening of the hind legs and to be more square and straighter through her hind legs up and down rather
Yeah.
than kind of at an angle.
Yeah.
So that's why what I'm suggesting might not even work all that well.
Yeah.
So to use enough inside rein to get a turn without a bend might give you a big enough circle that the adduction is quite light. And then it will take more time on the circle to get her to release the neck. But that's what I would look for. No
Okay.
matter what strategy you're choosing, you want to get her out of the shortening of the neck quicker and have her stay in the lengthening of the neck longer
Longer. Yeah.
for more strides.
Yeah.
And she likes it enough that she's searching for it and seeking.
Yes.
She's just not very good at it.
Yeah.
So the question is, why isn't she good at it? Do we not have enough engagement? Do we not have enough braking? Do we not have enough pushing? Do we not have enough steering? Like, what would help her?
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I don't think so. I'm headed back out to ride tomorrow, so I
Oh,
will
good.
yeah, give you an update and let you know how it goes.
Are you guys warming up tomorrow?
Lately. I
Mm.
think we actually broke freezing today for like the first time in like 4 or 5 days.
Well, I think
Which
this,
means mud. Yay.
yeah, the big winter storm, I think, is finally passing.
Yeah, of
At
course.
least you have really good footing in this arena for these
Yes.
guys.
And they've been doing a fantastic job maintaining it. So even when I get there in the morning, if it's been a little bit frozen, it's still really walkable. And then by the time I ride her, it's thawing.
Good.
But we've got a bunch of rain coming. Then it's gonna be unseasonably warm and rain. So
Yeah, we're going to be unseasonably warm and rainy by the weekend.
yeah, that's where we're headed.
Now that all my plants are dead.
Right. Like I said, more mud. Hooray.
Right.
I hope I can keep riding Storm. That's really going to be kind of the big question. It's just,
I think you can if you keep it slow and gentle.
yeah.
And even if you have to go out on the grass and the hills because of the mud factor, I think he's doing well enough on the flat surface in the arena that you've got a pretty good shot of, you just might have to do more turns on uneven ground, a lot
Yeah.
more turning, with or without a little bend of the neck. But
Yeah.
the turning on the uneven ground will help him find what you have on the flat ground with fewer aids,
Yeah.
less guidance and
Yeah.
direction. You'll just have to be busier on the hills.
Yeah. As long as it's not like cold and raining, the pen ends up drying out faster because they only go in there to eat
Oh,
once a
good.
day for 20 minutes. So as long as the weather isn't so bad that, because when the weather gets really nasty, she separates and puts the babies in the pen and leaves Storm and the other horse out because the other horse won't let the babies into the shed at the same time. So they don't get to get out of the
Yes.
weather if it's yucky. So fun logistics, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah,
cool. Thank you.
good. It's pretty good. And like I said, you may just add a tiny bit of leg as she stretches. You may not end up changing how you're doing this because it is working. So don't throw away what is working in
Yeah.
the ambition to help her along.
Yeah.
Be careful with that.
Yeah. I'm fine being really slow and delicate with her. So I
Yeah.
feel like it's been such a long road that all
But
this
definitely,
progress feels fast at this point,
oh my
even as
God,
slow as it's going.
she's so funny. She still seeks out the ground poles to go over.
Mhm.
That's hilarious.
Oh yeah, every time. I don't remember if she crossed that orange one or not at all, but I think she thought about it a couple times.
She
But
went over the ground pole
yes,
over on the
over
other jump
there
a couple of
several
times.
times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she cracks me up. I'm like, I really don't think you actually want to do that properly. But we walk them every time. I tell the barn owner, I'm like, well, if the poles are knocked down, it was Belle's fault because she
Yes.
decided to go on a walk over instead of a jump. So
Yes. Yes.
we do that. So yeah,
No, good
she's
job,
a
Jen.
hoot. Yeah, her character is like what coming out. Like I said, she's like waiting at the saddle for me and everything. It's really cool to see her sort of blooming into a really lovely horse.
Yeah, she's really enjoying the ride for sure. And I think if you try a couple of strategies, see if that helps her along. If it doesn't help her along, keep doing what you're doing for now and just give her more time.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you very
Sounds
much. This is good.
good. All righty. Stop the share. There we go. Okay.
Cool.
We'll check in. Uh,
Probably later this week,
if you
at
have
least.
questions, then send another video.
Okay.
But what you're doing right now, especially if you try things with Belle and you're not sure, she would be one I might want to see again.
Okay.
But I think Tally and Storm are good for at least another 2 weeks humming along on what you're doing.
Cool. Very good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, my dear.
Thank you so much.
Stop it, and I'll see you Monday.
Very good. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Bye.